Hey guys, this is FideMaster Michel, and in this video we're going to talk about 7 things you might be doing wrong in the openings of your chess games. Keep watching. The first thing I want to say is not using the 3 main principles for the opening. This is like basic, it is everywhere. However, I cannot do a video about typical mistakes in the opening and not mention the 3 basic principles. Also, some players know the principle, but they don't really use them in their games. So it's not the same to know the principle and to know what they state as properly using the principles in our games. So just to recall them: control the center, these 4 squares in the middle of the board, develop minor pieces. Minor pieces are knights and bishops, and castle as soon as possible. Another typical mistake is being afraid of double pawns in this common structure we can see after the trade on c6. I have seen players who try to avoid this situation after bishop takes, pawn takes, and they even damage their position to avoid something like this. And actually, I have good news here. This is not like a big problem. These double pawns have some very good compensations. When you capture like this, you're bringing pawns from the corner or from the side to the center, and this pawn now is going to be controlling, for example, d5. In some other positions, white can use this square for the knight, for example, and it can be really annoying. And now you have the pawn, that won't be possible. Also, you could be breaking the center and staying with 2 central pawns, which could be very good in some positions. And another thing here is the half open file. So you can activate your rook very easily with this kind of moves, and the rook is going to be very well in that half open file. Also, when your opponent is getting this, it's because very often they had to give the 2 bishops. So in general, we can say that there is enough compensation for this pawn structure. The next wrong thing is not developing knights before bishops. This is not like essential, but very often it's going to be a good tip to develop knights before. There might be a good reason to do this, and we could say most of the cases the knight is going to be developed over 3 bishop, over this kind of squares. However, it doesn't happen the same way with the bishop. The bishop very often can be developed to 3 or 4 squares, or sometimes 2 squares. So we don't want to give extra information to our opponent. He knows the knight is going to be developed over 3 bishop, but he doesn't know where the bishop is going to be developed over. So let's develop the knight, and then depending on what happens in the next move, then we could be developing the bishop. Another thing is not developing pieces on the side you are planning to castle. There is a principle stating develop minor pieces, but which one first? Well, if you're planning to castle kingside, which is very well in general, then a good idea is going to be to develop the pieces of the king side before the pieces on the queen side. Of course, this depends on the position, but in general it's going to be fine if you can do it in that way. Another common mistake in the openings is not making a pause when your opponent plays a new move. Imagine you're playing a game and you know the theory, but your opponent is playing something you had not seen before. So let's say this position, and we know the theoretical move is d6, but our opponent is playing here d5. When something like this happens, then we need to make a pause and try to evaluate this new move. This new move could be a blunder, this new move could be a trick our opponent is playing, or this new move could just be something as good as the theoretical move we already know, but maybe not as popular as the main line. So we need to make a pause, evaluate this new move, and take decisions according to our analysis. The next wrong thing is not playing only one opening so you understand it better. Sometimes we want to learn like 3 or 4 openings because we just enjoy learning openings, and on every game we play something different. And this is not completely good unless you are a professional player who needs to be very well prepared and play many openings. Then this is not really good. When you play only one opening, you are going to get used to it. You will understand typical plans, maneuvers, tricks, tactics. You will even understand typical endgames, so you will be much better player if you get familiar with that opening. And finally, something we might not be doing well is giving front unnecessary checks. Checks are always tempting. If we see the possibility to threaten the enemy king, is something we obviously want to do. However, they are not always good. In the opening, these checks on b5 and these checks on e2 are very common. However, they are not always a good idea. After bishop b5, very often our opponent can play moves like c6, defending, also getting the tempo, attacking the bishop, controlling the center. Also bishop d7 is a good defense, blocking, developing, and also if there is a trade, they continue developing. About the other move, queen e2, we are blocking the bishop. Our opponent has a very easy way to defend with this move, bishop e7, developing. Also when they castle, the king and the queen will be on an open file, that's not good, and when the rook comes here we will be losing tempos, moving to defend in that position. So the idea is that don't give all these checks, all these tempting checks we can see in the opponent. In general, they are not good unless you can get something like some material or force the king to move so they cannot castle later. Out of that, probably it's not going to be a good idea. The question for today: which of these common mistakes in the opening was new for you? Let me know in the comments. So I hope you have enjoyed this video. Help my channel with some like if it was like that. Subscribe so you get notifications for my next videos. Never stop believing. See you in the next.